that, but we're hearing these conversations of how, especially Labor, who are very worried that things are going to start changing hands because of their absolute absence and lack of leadership and moral courage, especially for the last 18 months, but again before then. They don't want that to be highlighted. They really try to minimize and negate any critique that is made of them. So when you say it took so long for them to call a ceasefire, it took all this community pressure, and months on end after October 2023 and the invasion began, for them to finally call for a ceasefire, almost like begrudgingly. They'll say, no, we call for a ceasefire, we're on the same page there, we try to minimize it, but having that information is very powerful when we go out from the community, and our time is very, very powerful. So I think the more that we have the information, the more we can, because Labour's very good, and as major parties are very good at trying to dismiss the genuine critiques that we have. The weapons trade is another really important one that we need to know more of to be able to put the community out. Labour wants to deny that it has anything to do with the manufacturing of weapons or weapons parts, and it has anything to do with other countries. It will deny that it's in a relationship with Israel, even over the last couple of days, where there was footage of technology that was manufactured in Australia being demonstrated by Israeli forces. The Prime Minister wanted to deny that that had anything to do with Australia. We know there are parts of weapons that are made in Australia, and the supply chain has been improved time and time again. The Victorian government had a partnership with Ballot Systems, which is the largest Israeli weapons manufacturer. I can tell you how much they gaslit us when we were in the Parliament, and we would say, we know there's a memorandum of understanding, we know there's a partnership here, and they would deny that it was actually there. And then they quietly didn't extend that memorandum of understanding while still pretending it never existed at the same time. It's quite bizarre, actually, but that's how they try to obfuscate and deny that they've had any complicity or involvement. It's really important that we have the information, talking to people, to undo some of that kind of minimizing work they do in the community. And I think those relationships and those partnerships with weapons manufacturers and weapons parts manufacturing are still ongoing. My Senate colleague, David Shoebridge, is doing incredible work at Senate Estimates. Some of you might have seen him asking questions directly of department heads, asking questions directly of ministers in the government at the moment about their knowledge of it, what they're doing to review those contracts, end those contracts, and they just pretend like we're in fairyland and it's not true, but it's really important that we hold it to account. And the movement's done a really good job of highlighting very concrete examples that Australia somehow is involved in this and is not doing enough to sanction and withdraw from those arrangements and demonstrate to the international community that it's not going to abide by and have any part in the genocide of Palestinians, which is what's happening at the moment.
I think we'll do a closing note. One thing I do want to ask, two questions. Albanese, 20 years ago, stood in Parliament saying that Palestinians are demonised, went on a huge spiel, great spiel. Pro-Palestinian he was. Very pro-Palestinian. He was progressive. What happened? What happened? Because it's so hard for him to put the foot down. He goes around it. But if anyone Google what he did in Parliament, he was so hard. He was saying that the Israelis are demonising the Palestinians, they're taking their land. He went right off, and then slowly, what happened? I'll ask him if I see, but I don't think it's enough. And I'll have closing.
Well, it's a good question, and it's $1 million question. We've seen this not only with the Prime Minister, but a lot of those representatives who, at one point, were the beacons of progressive politics, or so they said, and then have that support is completely dissipated. And what I've seen over many years, coming up front with this kind of power, and this kind of majoritarianism, and this kind of power, it's kind of absolute power that these major parties want. They don't talk about cooperation and working with other people or listening to each other, but it becomes kind of professionalizing politics that they just want to be able to have a seat at the table in Parliament, and it almost doesn't matter what they have to do to get there. I used to work in the refugee and asylum seeker sector, working with people who have fled war, persecution and torture, and over the years we see what's happened to the Labor Party, and it speaks a lot to their absolute silence complicity now, is that I think for them to kind of have this power and they've defined political power in a particular way, they've got to give up so much of themselves, and you just give one part here and one part there and one part there, and ultimately when they finally succeed and get to that position of power, there's actually nothing inside, it's hollow now. And that means you stand for nothing. And that's what we're seeing now, absolute vacuum of leadership, an absolute lack of moral courage. And when people are suffering and people are dying and there's a genocide and ongoing occupation of Palestinian territories, they are nowhere to be seen. So I think it's a politics of pure power, it's not a politics of hair or courage or vision, and that's what I think major party politics has become, which is why we should be part of changing that and why we have this opportunity and this opportunity becoming one of the
I'd like to get a different perspective. I think, so the Labor Party is a capitalist party along with the Liberal Party. The capitalists would prefer the Liberal Party in power, but when the Liberal Party's on the nose, the Labor Party is a trusted friend to implement their interests. And so, you know, for politicians, aspiring politicians like Anthony Albanese, you know, who's, you know, ambitious and so forth, or was always ambitious coming through student politics, I don't know him, but, you know, that's what I hear. You know, the Labor Party is part of, or supports the US alliance 100%. This isn't, it's a military alliance, but it's based on the fact that the imperialist nations basically expect to exploit the rest of the world, and the armies are the backup. And so for aspiring politicians like Anthony Albanese in the Labor Party, he is going to adopt that. He will be friends with Israel if that's what's required. Bob Hawke, who's lionelist in the Labor Party, was a full-on Zionist. He was a friend of Golda Meir. So, like, these are, you know, sure there are individual Labor Party members who do support Palestine and do try and put their views forward in the Labor Party. But the party as a capitalist party is 100% committed to the imperialist alliance, and politicians like Anthony Albanese, either you keep going with the Labor Party or you cross the floor and vote against it. So I don't accept any Labor Party MP who says, I can't do anything different for Palestine or anything different for refugees. If you actually feel like that, you have to cross the floor. So Maria van Wagenu in Caldwell, like, it doesn't mean zip if she supports Palestine in her heart. You have to act on it. You have to cross the floor and risk losing pre-selection. Otherwise, you're not a friend of Palestine. So it's not about morality or anything with them. It's about the interests of capitalism, basically, and that is why the US and Australia refuse to break their links with Israel. So, which is what provides such a big challenge to the Palestine movement. But we have had an impact, even though it might sometimes feel like we haven't. We have had an impact. Otherwise, they wouldn't have passed all these laws equating criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. They've only passed those laws because we haven't shut up. We've kept on mobilising. So we haven't let them get away easy, but it's because we've got more to do. Sorry, I just thought I'd add that about Labor Party.
Final words, whatever you like, about Palestine.
Sure.
No question.
Yeah. The final words, as I'm coming from the Muslim community, and I think not only talking about the values of Islam and Judaism and Christianity, every faith that I practice and the values that we all have, this is the time to put our efforts in action. I call upon my Muslim brothers and sisters. We are in a critical moment that we need everyone to vote. It is not for a long time, for years, that politics are spoken about in place of worship. Brothers and sisters, I believe as I have read about religions and the values of every faith, that if a message in every place of worship is away from the lives of people on Palestine, it is unfortunately not supporting the main goal of why that religion is there. I call upon my Muslim community to participate actively in elections, to consider that this is a religious practice. Now it is a duty upon all of us to take voting as a religious duty upon us. We have to be there to change those, and this is also one of the things that I mentioned about Albanese and why they have been in the comfort zone. You know, they go now with a big budget of money in a very divisive language, disrespectful language, to places of worship, including in my community, knowing that we've been rallying in front of their offices for months, and the only way for them to be platformed in our community and our organizations is when they get a big check and they tell us, this is how we support you. While in fact, this is a way of disrespecting us. This is disrespecting us. How can we look for infrastructure and buildings and expansions of places of worship and places of where we have our activities while people are getting killed? How can we consider that? How can you show me that you're supporting me by coming to my mosque or my church or my synagogue saying, look, this is how I support you? While in fact, this is how you disrespect me. Because the only way that you respect me and my community is when you say, I support you and your people and stand against the genocide. I call upon all of our communities to take that seriously. Voting is a religious duty upon all of us and a moral duty upon all of us. And I also say that we call it an amana. Amana is a trust. Amana is what we are entrusted to look after in this life. Our children are amana. Our votes are amana. Our families are amana. Protecting our home Australia is an amana. The children that are getting killed everywhere in the world are an amana, which means that they are a trust that we have to look after. This amana, this trust, should not be exchanged with money. Should not be exchanged with anything except the value that we have, which is standing for those oppressed people in Palestine. I call upon my Muslim brothers and sisters again and tell them on May 3rd, it is an opportunity to put our values in religion, our values in culture, our values that we all believe in. We strengthen our connection with our brothers and sisters from every faith when we stand by the right people who deserve that. It is a time to end the domination of the two major parties. I take Fatima Payman as an example. I made 2 speeches on Friday about Fatima Payman celebrating the first hijabi woman in the parliament. But unfortunately, this was not completed. Fatima Payman resigned and made a sacrifice because of the values that she practices in her religion. We also have to stand for that. We have to stand for the values of every faith that we practice, and I think on May 3rd, if we lose that seat of Wills, the Labor Party will take it for granted. The Labor Party will think that the votes of those people is in our pocket, no matter what we do. Changing and unseating Peter Khalil is sending a strong message to the Labor Party that we can make a change. Our votes matter. Our people can bring someone or remove someone. And this is what made Albanese stay in the comfort zone for years. He keeps screaming and shouting for Palestine. As soon as they get the position, no more actions. We need to show them that we will punish you for not standing for justice. And we will be rewarding those who have spoken about justice. Thank you.
right across the world, and no one saw in Gaza. It has been incredible to witness, especially over the last 18 months, what happens to people that you think are just and right, but then are completely absent and silent when people need them the most. And we have seen that right across our places of government, right across Australia, and it's no wonder that tens of thousands of people take the streets every week to march for peace and to march for justice. I think there's something incredibly strong about the movement that has been built and will continue to build until we have justice and peace. And it is the bringing together of communities who, many of whom might have the direct relationship to the Palestinians before the last year or so, but they have become aware, and once they become aware, they too see their experiences of colonization, of oppression, of genocide, of ethnic cleansing, of racism, of discrimination and prejudice in the experience of the Palestinian people, and it speaks to this kind of universal experience of so many people. And so politicians deny that this movement of peace is actually much broader and much stronger than they will ever give all of us credit for, is a slight on their understanding of what is actually happening in the Australian community. They want to make us feel powerless and hopeless, like there's nothing that we can do to change the course of the future. But I've been reading Nelson Mandela's autobiography over the last few months. It's a big piece, and one of the things that he spends a lot of time talking about in Long Walk to Freedom is actually a lot of the setbacks. He talks a lot about the things that they tried, despite we all know being on the absolute right side of history. It is galling when you read some of those chapters, and he talks about the strike failing, or this protest movement just not getting traction with people, and you think, how can people not know, given the kind of justice that we knew, which was apartheid in South Africa, and not get on board with what was happening? It tells you about the struggle for building movements, and it's been very consoling to me because change doesn't happen in a linear way. They talk about the arc of justice for a reason. It's long, but it bends, slowly bends towards justice. And it's important to take heart from some of the great movements for progress and peace in history, that we are on the right side of that history, and there are times when it can be frustratingly slow and full of grief and pain, which is what I know so many people are experiencing, what we talked about at the start, having to scroll through those images, and so many people just feeling overwhelmed and not being sure what to do. But that's what they're trying to make us feel, like that we are powerless and we can't do anything. But remember, we have the power. We're building one of the biggest movements of peace that that history has ever seen, and people can't take away that kind of solidarity that is growing between different parts of the community. So we've got to keep going. We've got to believe in our power. Politics can't fix everything, but things can't be fixed until we fix the politics. And it is really important we take that message to the ballot box in 2.5 weeks' time, and that we speak to every possible person that we know, talking about why you might be voting differently, and asking them to share that message too. I think we'll be able to demonstrate incredible collective power when it comes to May 3rd. So hold on to hope, everyone. Change is around the corner. We're going to work for it, we're going to fight for it, but we will achieve peace and justice together. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, okay. I think one of the things we have to say as part of the final part of the election campaign is that politicians and parties that either turn a blind eye to genocide or actively support a genocide are not going to help you and me when we're fighting against the dictates of the billionaire class. And because there will be some people who think it's awful what's happening in Gaza, but they might think, well, we should vote based on other issues. But I think the two things go together. If you're prepared to accept what's happening in Gaza, and I'd say also what's happening to refugees in Australia as well, then you're basically prepared to, you'll throw any of us under the bus. When the billionaires want to take you home, want to send you into robo-debt, which actually drives some people to suicide, or, you know, whatever the issue. That's we have to say to people, you can't trust these people. And you don't need to have a degree in Palestine You just have to be a human being. You don't need to know all the history of Palestine. You just have to be a human being to know that what is wrong, what is going on in Palestine is wrong, and we need to do everything to stop it. And the other thing the politicians are trying to persuade us, and some in the media are trying to persuade us, is that there's nothing you can do. It's as if it's an act of God, what's happening to the Palestinians. You can't do anything. Yes, I mean, I've heard Peter Khalil and other Labor politicians say this. There's nothing you can do. Yes, we've called for a ceasefire. There's nothing else you can do. There is, we know, we talked about it just before, there's a lot they can do. They can help bring this genocide to an end by stopping all support for Israel. And that's what Socialist Alliance fights for. And we're for, basically, international solidarity and justice and opposition to any kind of exploitation and we support self-determination.
I'm going to wrap it up, but I actually want to say thank you to you guys. It's been an honour to hang out and sit with you guys. And I also want you, just a second. I also want you guys to look around each other, because you're actually doing more than some people sitting home doing nothing. You guys are out there. I'm part of a WhatsApp group that I can't believe the people that have been letterboxing out there, day in, day out, all the time, doing all of that work. They never ever get the credit that they deserve, because it's silent work, and the people on the pedestals are the ones that get all the glory, where you guys have been doing it. Also, Michael, I want to say thank you very much, Michael. Michael Shake, who put a lot of this together. He's been my best friend for a long time. He created the flotilla. He also worked with Rachel Corrie. He spent some time in Israel prison. And thanks again for organising and doing everything you did.